The Handkerchief by Great 78.
Chapter 113. The Talisman, the Trickery, and the Tongue-tie. Draco took a deep breath, steeling his nerves for what he was about to do. He would turn around, grab one arm each of Potter and Hermione, and disapparate. It would only work one time. Within minutes of him betraying his family's ideals, as soon as he did it, his father would change the wards to the house, preventing him from ever coming back. He might never see his mother, Pym, his room, his things ever again, but it had to be done. He hesitated, trying to work out if he could take Weasley as well. Then the door of the drawing room opened behind him, and the voice from his nightmares rang out.
"What is this? What's happened, sissy?"
No. No. Draco was momentarily frozen to the spot. How had she found out? How could he have let this happen? It had to be Pettigrew, he was willing to bet. Pym had told him that the mousy man had been lurking upstairs, listening in to the foyer. He should have asked that Pym go back and do something, grab him and apparate him to Siberia or something. In his moment of indecision, Bellatrix walked around the group, stopping directly in front of Hermione to stare at her.
"But surely this is the mudblood girl! This is Granger!"
Draco could see Bellatrix in profile. Her painted lips were drawn away from her appallingly grey teeth, making her look maniacal, even from here. "Yes, it's Granger!" cried Lucius. Draco looked at him in utter disgust. Lucius shot him a look of reproachful apology, then continued, either not realizing or not caring that he was severing his bond to his son, here and now, as surely as he was signing Hermione's and Potter's death sentences. "And beside her, we think, Potter. Potter and his friends caught at last."
"Potter? Are you sure? Well, then the Dark Lord must be informed at once."
Bellatrix stepped back to dramatically pull up her sleeve, exposing her dark mark. Draco considered simply pushing her aside and wedging himself between her and Hermione, but Lucius reached her first. "I was about to call him," his father said, reaching for Bellatrix's arm to stop her from touching the mark. "I shall summon him, Bella. Potter has been brought to my house, and it is therefore upon my authority."
"Your authority?"
Bellatrix sneered, pulling away from Lucius.
"You lost your authority when you lost your wand, Lucius. How dare you? Take your hands off of me."
Lucius snapped back.
"This is nothing to do with you. You did not capture the boy."
And now the werewolf was joining the fracas, saying,
"Begging your pardon, Mr. Malfoy, but it's us that caught Potter, and us that'll be claiming the gold."
"Gold!" huffed Bellatrix, still fighting off Lucius. "Take your gold, filthy scavenger! What do I want with gold? I seek only the honor of—" But just then she stopped moving to look at something near the door. Lucius, thinking he had gained the upper hand, rolled up his own sleeve. "Stop!" Bellatrix shrieked at the top of her lungs. "Do not touch it! We shall all perish if the Dark Lord comes now!" Everyone was still. The inhabitants of the manor knew something must be very wrong. For Bellatrix to give up her chance at praise from the Dark Lord was nearly unheard of. The Dark Witch moved with lightning quickness towards one of the snatchers, the snaggle-toothed one that had brought the goblin head a few nights before. Now Draco saw what had caught Bellatrix's eye. The hilt of a sword was just visible in the belt of the snatcher. "What is that?" Bellatrix asked coldly.
"Sword,"
Snaggletooth said simply.
"Give it to me!"
"It's not yours, missus. It's mine. I reckon I found it."
Bellatrix raised her wand with whip-crack reflexes, and stunned the man where he stood. Draco thought that the man ought to consider himself lucky that he wasn't killed immediately. This woman had killed for far less. The other snatchers began shouting at the sudden stunning of their comrade. Greyback rushed over to grab the sword from the fallen Snaggletooth. In a matter of seconds, Bellatrix had stunned them all, except for Greyback, whom she had forced into a kneeling position. Bellatrix yanked the sword from his hands, and for an absurd second Draco thought it looked as though she was about to knight him. He realized she was far more likely to run him through with the sword, though.
"Where did you get this sword?"
Bellatrix whispered, and now Draco realized how scared she looked. It was a new look for her, and Draco found that he liked it less than her other expressions. If Bellatrix was afraid of something, they all needed to be terrified.
"How dare you!"
Greyback snarled at her.
"Release me, woman!"
"Where did you find this sword? Snape sent it to my vaults at Gringotts." Draco gasped, and he was fairly certain that he heard the same from the small group of prisoners in the middle of the room.
"It was in their tent. Release me, I say."
She did so, and Greyback jumped up. Rather than attack Bellatrix, however, he moved behind one of the chairs, away from the others.
"Draco! Move this,"
she gestured to the rest of the snatchers,
"scum outside! If you haven't got the guts to finish them, then leave them in the courtyard for me."
Narcissa flared in anger next to him.
"Don't you dare speak to Draco like—" "Be quiet!"
Bellatrix said, and Narcissa stilled.
"The situation is graver than you could possibly imagine, sissy. We have a serious problem."
Bellatrix stood there, staring at the sword as if transfixed. She continued, almost as though working things out in her own head.
"If it is indeed Potter, he must not be harmed. The Dark Lord wishes to dispose of Potter himself, but if he finds out, I must know."
After a moment of hesitation and a nudge of urging from his mother, "Go, I will protect them," the words seemed to float into his mind. Draco went to the snatchers to levitate them out the door. He cast Muffliato as soon as they were clear. "Pym!" A pop, and Pym and Raffi appeared. "How is the potion coming?"
"'Tis nearly finished," Pym said. "It only needs about 2 more minutes."
Draco did not know if there were 2 minutes left. He could still hear his mother and Bellatrix arguing inside about what to do with the prisoners. He turned back to the elves. Can you take these men somewhere?"
"Who are they?"
Raffi asked with an appraising look. Draco had a feeling about why she asked, a slightly sickening swoop in his gut. I think these are the men that killed Ted and the others."
"I can take care of them," Raffi said evenly. "I know of a place from which they can't escape. Papa, can you help me?"
Before Draco could say a word, the elves exchanged a look, and Raffi snapped her fingers. She, Pym, and the men disappeared. To Draco's surprise, the normally small pop of elf apparition was much louder than usual this time. He supposed it was because they were bringing the snatchers with them. He was thankful for his Muffliato. There was a scuffle of noise behind him in the drawing-room. Narcissa appeared in the doorway, levelling Draco with a significant look. "There is a chance here," she seemed to be saying.
"Take these prisoners down to the cellar, Greyback,"
Narcissa called. It was ideal. Draco could follow the werewolf to the cellar, and he would disapparate out with them in pairs until everyone was out.
"Wait!"
said Bellatrix from behind the group.
"All except for the mudblood."
Blood rushed into Draco's ears. Fuck. No! He needed at least Hermione and Potter together. The rest could be taken wherever, but he needed at least the 2 of them to go with him. The room was filled with sudden yelling. It was Weasley. "No! You can have me! Keep me!" For once, Draco was glad that Weasley had such a powerful crush on his witch. Yes, Draco thought sickly. If you have to take someone, Take him. It surprised Draco, the feeling of sadness, regret, at the thought of Weasley sacrificing himself for Hermione. Bellatrix hit Weasley across the face, hard. If she dies under questioning, I'll take you next. Blood traitor is next to mudblood in my book. Take them downstairs, Greyback, and make sure they are secure, but do nothing more to them. Yet. Bellatrix cut Hermione's binds to the rest of the group. As the group shuffled out, Draco caught Dean Thomas's eye. Dean had known Ted, had heard what Draco had done for him. Dean's eyes were pleading, searching, and Draco did his best to look resolute and certain. He gave the Gryffindor a brief nod. I will do everything I can, he thought. He turned back towards the drawing room. Behind him, Greyback pushed the rest of the group to the staircase that Draco had only left. Merlin, was it really just a few minutes ago? He turned to see Bellatrix grab Hermione by her hair and tug her to the centre of the room. Draco once again pushed forwards to go to his witch, but his mother stood in his path. "Remember the potion," she urged, without moving her mouth. God help him, it had to be ready. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind, born of the weeks and months spent pretending to torture witches and wizards in Amicus's class.
"Aunt Bella, do you mind if I have the first go? This—"
He fixed Hermione with a look of loathing and disgust, and smirked at her.
"This particular mudblood has always been a thorn in my side at Hogwarts."
But he touched his chest as he stared menacingly at her from the doorway. Hermione's copper eyes flared slightly, but she made no other movement, panicked into paralysis. Bellatrix was still studying the sword, deep in contemplation. She looked up at him, a bit surprised to see him there.
"Done with our little snatcher problem so soon, Neffykins. Brilliant."
She flicked her gaze appraisingly at the back of Hermione's head, where the young witch had been drawn away from her, still standing but hunched over, hugging her arms tightly to herself.
"Are you sure you can handle this one? She seems a bit of a spitfire. She might prove to be too much for you, Drakey Poo."
Bellatrix sneered at him.
"I'm pretty sure I can take care of her,"
Draco said threateningly, his silver eyes fixed upon her copper ones. "I will always take care of you," he thought, and she gasped, looking up at him almost as though he had spoken it aloud. Draco stepped further into the room. They might have, or might not have, just shared a moment of legitimacy, but he needed to be sure that she knew what to do. He drew close to her, leaning down menacingly, baring his teeth at her, doing all that he could to appear as though he detested her. He moved in closer, his lips stretched into a grimacing sneer, barely brushing the farthest flung strands of her wild and lovely hair. "Act like this hurts," he whispered. Then, for good measure, as he drew away, he spoke again quietly but loud enough for Lucius and Bellatrix to hear, as though repeating himself. "I hope this hurts very badly." He pointed his wand at her, and hurled a non-verbal jellylegs jinx at her. He felt it leave his wand, and a second later Hermione writhed, as though in intense pain. Draco nearly cried out in gratefulness, but quickly schooled his features. It had worked. Had the jinx hit her, she would have collapsed upon the ground, her legs no longer able to support her. As it was, though, she stood for a second and then crouched down, as though shielding herself from pain. When he pointed his wand up and away from her, she stood back up defiantly, something she could not have done had the jinx worked. But he had to know. He had to know if a truly dark curse could touch her. He looked up at Bellatrix, who stood off to one side of Hermione. She was still holding the sword, but had turned her attention to him. Draco was careful not to look into her eyes, but it did not matter. Anywhere he looked at her, he hated her. Her teeth that struggled to eat vegetables, her hands that had just dragged his witch by her hair, or her foot that had crushed his mother's bird and her spirit when they were both children. He hated her so much, and he channeled that hate into his thoughts. "Crucio!" he seethed in a loud whisper, and once again Hermione writhed upon the ground, this time seeming to be in far worse pain. She screamed so loudly that Draco could nearly make out an echoing scream from the cellar below. He lowered his wand, gasping in surprised panic. Had he actually hurt her? She lay there, sobbing like she had done in Professor Umbridge's office years before. But she faced away from Bellatrix and Lucius, looking towards Draco and Narcissa. Through her sobs she gave the smallest of smiles. A cool sweat of relief broke out over Draco. It took everything he had in him not to burst into a grin. "Whittle Neffy Diddles!" Bellatrix called to him nastily. Of all the nicknames she had come up with, Draco liked this one the least. "Your very first Unforgivable! My, Lucius, you must be so proud." "Yes, I can hardly believe it," Lucius said in confusion, next to her, looking with bewilderment at his son and wife. But Bellatrix's attention had returned to the sword. "Tell me, girlie, how did you break into my vault and take this?" We didn't break into your vault." "Crucio!" Bellatrix's curse packed far more power and anger behind it than Draco's had, and his stomach lurched. What if the talisman was not strong enough? Hermione screamed even louder, shrieking in pain and gasping when Bellatrix stopped. The yells from below had stopped for a moment as well. "I'm going to ask you again," Bellatrix seethed. "Where did you get this sword? Where?" "We found it. We found it." Hermione's voice was punctuated by exaggerated sobs. "Please!" Another crucio, and Hermione screamed out again, pain seeming to rack her body. "You are lying, filthy mudblood, and I know it! You have been inside my vault at Gringotts! Tell the truth! Tell the truth!" Bellatrix sent a non-verbal curse at Hermione, who had not been looking at her, but at Draco. She did not react, and Bellatrix pointed her wand more angrily. Draco widened his eyes at her meaningfully. "Pain!" And she began rolling on the floor in pretend agony once more. Hermione screamed, and from below, Weasley bellowed her name again. Hermione turned her head surreptitiously in Bellatrix's direction, so that she could see the next curse coming. "What else did you take? What else have you got? Tell me the truth, or I swear I shall run you through with this knife!" Bellatrix's eyes were bloodshot and crazed. She had withdrawn from her robes a small silver dagger, the hilt of which was carved with an ornate B. Draco fought against the urge to rush at her and grab the knife. He had no idea how a talisman would work against a blade. Thankfully, his insane aunt seemed rooted to the spot, either in lunacy or in fear. "What else did you take? What else? Answer me, Crucio!" This time, Draco worried that the talisman might have broken. Hermione's shrieks reverberated across the room and out into the foyer. She had broken out into a cold sweat and was panting hard after Bellatrix released the curse. Draco hoped fervently that it was just from exertion, not actual pain. The calls from the cellar had started again. Even if it did make him jealous that Weasley could be so open with how much he cared for Hermione, a part of him was glad for it. They were still alive down there, at least, and if he knew Ollivander and Luna, they were doing what they could to help. Bellatrix was likewise panting and sweating. "How did you get into my vault? Did that dirty little goblin in the cellar help you?" "We only met him tonight," Hermione sobbed. "We've never been inside your vault. It isn't the real sword. It's a copy. Just a copy." Draco breathed a sigh of relief. There was a copy, it was true. That copy was in Gringotts, in the Lestrange's vault, if he had to hazard a guess based on Bellatrix's line of questioning. As far as he could figure, that was the one that Professor Snape had secured there. Perhaps they could call Gringotts and find out, and this would be all over, Draco thought wildly. "A copy!" Bellatrix yelled. "Oh, a likely story!" "But we can find out easily," Lucius interjected. "Draco, fetch the goblin. He can tell us whether the sword is real or not." Draco started to speak, to argue back, to recommend a quick flu call to verify the copy. But his tongue was tied. This was the real sword, he knew, but he was unable to discuss the fake one in the vault with anyone who did not already know about it. He couldn't even suggest that they get in touch with Gringotts about it. Fucking Snape and his fucking tongue-tie curse, he thought angrily. Frustrated, he turned to his mother. "Please watch out for her," he thought, and she appeared to understand. "I will," she whispered quietly. He hurried to the door, and with one last look at the panicked Hermione on the floor, he left the drawing room.
Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Handkerchief by Great 78.